1, 2, 3, 4.
What's up and welcome to my review of the HP Reverb G2. Now I've spent well over 100 hours in the headset, including playing all the way through Half-Life Alyx and all the missions in Star Wars Squadrons, as well as a bunch of multiplayer, and then a bunch of gameplay in Elite Dangerous, Pavlov, Beat Saber, Hyperdash, and a bunch of other games as well. Currently, Steam VR has me logged in at 2,700 hours of Steam VR usage. For some reason, Steam VR counts at 2 times the rate, but then I've also spent hundreds of hours in my Quest 1 and Quest 2. So while I'm not an expert VR reviewer, I have spent over 2,000 hours in VR. So after spending so much time in the HP Reverb G2, do I think it's a headset that's worth buying? So in this review, I'm going to talk about the ergonomics of the headset, the usability, the clarity of the display, setting it up and using it with a computer, how to optimize your computer when using it, and also how powerful of a computer you'll actually need to run this really high-resolution VR headset. It's priced very competitively, and I think it's worth taking a good look at if you're interested in an enthusiast-level VR headset. Let's dive into this review. Here we go. Now the first major pro for the HP Reverb is its incredible visual clarity, especially when compared to basically any other headset except perhaps the Pimax 8KX. The Reverb G2 provides the most detailed VR image I've ever tested. Period. There's basically no screen door effect at all. It's almost retina display level clarity, but not quite, because you can still see the aliasing along the image's corners and lines here and there, but it is incredible clarity. You can perfectly read text inside of VR simulator type games like Elite Dangerous, Star Wars Squadrons, or Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now I've set up the Reverb G2 on 4 computers. Setup is very straightforward. You can utilize a full-size DisplayPort for a desktop, or they give you a mini DisplayPort adapter, or I also purchased a USB-C to DisplayPort adapter for the Scar 15 since it didn't have a mini DisplayPort. Now they also include a USB-C to USB-A dongle in the Reverb box, so if you need to use the USB-C for the DisplayPort, you can use the USB-C to USB-A dongle like I did on the Scar 15 to get everything set up and running. Once everything's plugged in, Windows 10 will install the mixed reality portal, and from there you'll need to pair your controllers and set up the play space. And the last thing you'll need to do is download Steam VR and whatever games you want to play. Now the HP Reverb is excellent for virtual desktop usage because the clarity on the headset is so much better than all the other ones. That said, the FOV on the HP Reverb is lower, so you're probably going to have to turn your head looking around quite a bit if you want to have like full detail on like a really high resolution desktop-like experience. Now I want to also thank HP for sending the Reverb G2 for me to review. I will be sending this review unit back to them, and I also want to mention that there is a link in the video description down below that if you do decide to buy the HP Reverb G2, it does go to help support my channel. That said, no pressure to buy this headset, only buy it if you think it'll meet your needs. Now the Reverb comes with comfortable padding on the headset straps, and it feels very comfortable and lightweight to keep on your head for extended periods of time. Like I was able to play VR for 3 to 4 hours of time in a row without having discomfort or anything like that on my head. Like for example, if I play the Pimax 5K Plus, there's just a lot of weight on my cheeks or on my top of my head. Like if I play the Quest 2 and kind of clamp it down really tight so I have good visual clarity. Well, with the HP Reverb, I don't really have to worry about that because it's very easy to hit the visual sweet spot right as I put it on. We've got an elastic band here, so there's not too much pressure on your head, and it just kind of sits there, and it's very easy to find that visual sweet spot and maintain that sweet spot throughout the VR experience, which helps improve immersion because you're not like battling the headset very often to improve clarity. Like you're there, and it's easy. 2 giant thumbs up for ergonomics of the headset and comfort taking it on and off is very, very easy. Now the IPD adjustment goes from 60 to 68 millimeters, but the IPD on this device is not really that sensitive, and I know that because the IPD slider slid around on me a lot, and sometimes I didn't even notice the difference. Like when the IPD is off on the Quest 2, I'll be like, ew, this is not correct. But with the Reverb, it just didn't bother me as much when the IPD was incorrect. You may want to tape the IPD knob so it doesn't move if you find the sweet spot for you. Now, when I first got the Reverb, the soft rubber cable felt very sticky and basically got stuck to everything, and it was very annoying. Like when you'd move it across your shirt, it would like catch way more. But now that the cable is worn in and more dirty, I guess, it just slides more easily. If you're gonna do wired VR a lot, I highly recommend getting a cable pulley system. I got this off Amazon for $30, and I've spent thousands of hours now in VR, and a lot of that time I did not have a pulley system, and I was just fighting the cable, getting caught on my shoulder, on the chair, driving over the cable with the chair, which is not good for the cable. I've recently set up this pulley system. It only took about 10 to 15 minutes to do, and it significantly increases VR immersion since you don't have to fight the cable anymore. The cable stays up and out of the way, and if you have it set up correctly, you basically don't even notice it. The one thing you have to keep in mind though is don't turn too many times in one direction without untwisting it, because you don't want to over twist and torque the cable and damage it. Now there are a couple of tools that you can use inside of VR to help you keep track of your twisting one way versus the other way, which I will link in the video description down below as well. The nose blackout rubber prevents quick and easy view into the real world, but because it blocks the light that would come in like around the gaps around your nose, it does increase immersion, and overall I do prefer the increased immersion. It was just hard to get used to not being able to see down through the gaps, because with my Quest 2, like when I need to get a drink or check my phone, I can just look down through the little gap by my nose and see the text message that just came in, for example. But with this one, I have to lift the headset up and away and then look at the text message. Now the Reverb includes great speakers, the same ones that are included on the Valve Index. They sit off of your ear and provide great immersion and surround sound. Now taking a quick look at the stats, we've got 2160 by 2160 per eye resolution. This is very high resolution per eye. That's 4.7 megapixels per eye. That means we're gonna need a lot of computing power to fill in those pixels, especially if you wanna get the full 90 Hertz refresh rate on the display in all the games you play. Now we do have Fresnel lenses on here, so we do have some God rays on the display. These only really become visible when you have like predominantly a dark environment with a handful of really bright objects. But overall for me, the God rays on this device were less intrusive than they are on other VR headsets I've tried. Now the FOV is rated to be 114 degrees, maybe even just slightly worse than the Quest 2 for field of view. And I gotta say that FOV does make a big difference for me, but the actual visual clarity improvement that the Reverb has is also awesome. The controllers themselves feel bendy compared to the Valve and Oculus products. So like here's the three controllers. You know, the Quest controller has like no flex in it at all. The Index controller has no flex in it at all, but the Reverb, it's just got this like bendy part right here. I'm just like, why did they make it all bendy? Holding together just fine so far though. Something else that's kind of a bummer with the HP Reverb is that some of the default controller bindings just don't work out of the box. For example, Pavlov VR, I could not play the game at all with the default controller bindings. And it required me to go into the Steam VR controller settings, go to the custom menu, and download the community bindings for the HP Reverb G2. So just know that with certain titles, you're going to need to do that in order to get compatibility and full functionality out of this headset. Overall, I really like the ergonomics of the controllers. They feel very similar to my Quest 2 controllers in the fit and feel and how the buttons work, as well as their placement. I would say that the controllers worked just fine in about 70 to 80% of the games I tried out of the box, but just know that some of the games you'll need to fiddle with the bindings. Now I love that we have inside-out tracking on the Reverb G2. This will allow you to use the headset with a laptop, for example, as you move the laptop around. If you're locked down to a specific area for VR, like with base stations, say with the Valve Index, you're not going to be able to take that with you on the road. But if you're like me and you've got a powerful gaming laptop, you can just take the Reverb with you wherever you are, or move it from room to room around your house as needed and play VR wherever you want. Controller tracking works really well as long as your hands are are out in front or on the sides in clear view of the tracking cameras. Now, compared to the first generation of the Reverb, we have 4 cameras on this unit instead of 2. This does improve and increase the overall tracking and reduce the blind spots, but the front cameras are not positioned low enough to prevent blind spots as you reach down lower. So what this means is whenever the camera loses view of the controller, it's going to put that controller into gyroscopic mode, and it's going to basically teleport that controller in front of you. And this is only a big issue in certain games where you need to be looking forward and you can't look down to track the controller as you reach down. You know, say in a game like Skyrim or let's say Hyperdash, wherever you're aiming or wherever you're looking is where you're going to be reaching, and it works just fine and it tracks your controller just fine. But say in a game like Pavlov or in Beat Saber, where you need to be looking straight ahead to track the incoming notes or to track incoming enemies, you don't want to have to look down whenever you go to reload your magazine, or say when you're doing a big swing in Beat Saber and your arm is at the downward trend, well that controller may teleport to be in front of you and is no longer tracking as you bring it around to swing at another note. And this has caused me to miss some notes in Beat Saber here and there. Now you can get around the blind spots by either holding your hands out in front of you deliberately or by looking down when you need to reach down to your waist, as this points the cameras down as well while you're doing the action so the tracking is not lost. So controller occlusion is a problem for all inside-out tracking, and that happens when you block the view of one controller with the other one, and this can cause issues, say in a game where you're aiming a rifle down the line with 2 hands. It's not going to happen that often, but know that it happens a lot less when you have base stations with external tracking. Like, that's the optimal solution to prevent controller occlusion tracking loss. Now, when you hook up the Reverb G2 to a computer, it's going to use the Windows Mixed Reality environment, and this is going to be like your home base whenever you're using the headset. You can also control your computer with the keyboard and the mouse from inside of that environment, which is really cool. So you don't need to bust out your controllers just to, say, open a game or open a video player or whatever you're doing. And this, of course, also allows you to use the Windows Mixed Reality environment as kind of like this virtual desktop custom environment. Like, you can set up the windows for different applications to go on different parts of the walls, and you can have like a music room or like a video playing room. Or overall, I didn't really use the Windows Mixed Reality very much. I pretty much just used it as a launcher to launch Steam VR, which is where I would actually recommend you buy and play your games from, because if you ever switch out your headset, having your games in the Steam VR ecosystem will basically allow you to use whatever headset you want in the future. Now, because the HP Reverb has such a crazy high resolution, it means that you're gonna have to tweak the graphics settings on any graphically demanding game. Lightweight games like Beat Saber or Hyperdash, those are gonna pretty much run at default settings on almost all of the current hardware that's at least a mid-range computer or better. And I tested this with the RTX 3060 laptop, the Gigabyte G5, and I was able to play Beat Saber and Hyperdash pretty much flawlessly. Both of those ran really, really well, even at 100% resolution. And that's only an $1,100 laptop. But in games like Half-Life Alyx or say Star Wars Squadrons or Elite Dangerous, you're gonna need to tweak the in-game settings and reduce their graphical demand. And then you also will want to reduce your Steam VR video resolution. And you may also want to enable or disable motion smoothing depending on the title. If you want to make sure that you're getting the best visual experience possible, I highly recommend buying the FPS VR app on Steam. This will give you an in-game overlay allowing you to see your FPS response rate and whether it is your CPU or GPU that is bottlenecking your VR experience. When I was playing on the Aorus 15G or the Scar 15 in Half-Life Alyx, because it didn't quite maintain a perfect frame rate at 90 FPS, it would just drop down to 45 and do the motion smoothing. And this would only put like a 45% demand on the GPU, which didn't make any sense to me. So I disabled motion smoothing and I was able to average like 75 to 90 FPS consistently with very minimal stuttering. So for me, with the Scar 15, 15 and Aorus 15G, that's the way I would recommend playing a game like Half-Life Alyx with motion smoothing disabled. But for a laptop like the Gigabyte G5, playing with motion smoothing enabled makes a lot of sense because you're never going to be able to hit 90 FPS at 100% render resolution. So your only other option is just reducing the rendered resolution, which I did try out. I dropped the rendered resolution down to 50%, and then Half-Life Alyx averaged 90 FPS again. And visually speaking, inside of the headset, it was still quite clear and it played fairly smooth. So just know that you don't have to have a super computer to be able to use the HP Reverb. You can run the headset on like a mid-tier computer, and then later on down the line when you upgrade your computer, you'll be able to turn up the resolution or graphical quality. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths of the HP Reverb, is that when you buy this headset, you're basically future-proofing your VR experience for a long time, because I think most people will be super happy with the visual experience, the audio experience, the comfort that this headset has as a whole. So even if you can't run all of the games at max resolution and settings, as long as you're willing to tinker with the settings and tune it to whatever hardware you have, this headset will do really well as long as you have, let's say, an RTX 2060 desktop level or newer. And if you've got a laptop, I would recommend having an RTX 2070 Super or newer to be able to play at least the basic VR games, the easier to run VR games at 100% render resolution. Right now, I think the only two GPUs that can truly get close to maximizing the performance of the HP Reverb is probably the RTX 3080 and 3090, with the RTX 3090 being required in some of the more demanding titles out there. And I'm speaking from experience. My RTX 2080 Ti could not max out Elite Dangerous no matter what, even if I set the settings as low as possible. So just know that you'll need an RTX 3080 or 3090 if you truly want to max the graphics out on this headset, and you may even need the RTX 4090 ultimately to be able to maximize all games at full 90 hertz refresh rates, which is just, it's crazy town. So just know that as long as you have a mid-range gaming laptop or desktop or better, you're going to be able to tweak the settings to be able to have a good VR experience. So who should buy this headset? Well, first of all, the Reverb is for people that want the best visual quality in VR. Like, that's the number one feature without a doubt. But of course, if you want something that's super comfortable that you can wear for extended periods of time, a headset that has a good visual sweet spot and that's easy to maintain. And of course, you're going to need to be willing and able to tweak your video settings, because this thing is not going to work out of the box. Like, you go out and buy an Oculus Quest 2, you're going to be able to put that on and just start playing games and never mess with the settings and still have a great time. The Reverb G2 has much better visual fidelity than the Quest 2, but it's going to require a mid-range to high-end gaming PC or laptop in order to even take advantage of that additional hardware and visual capability. And then in addition, you're going to need to tweak the settings for each game you play as long as it's a graphically demanding game. And last but not least, anyone that buys the HP Reverb is going to need to be willing to deal with the tracking blind spots, or just buy the Valve Index controllers and base stations in addition to the Reverb, so that you get like the best of both worlds. You get the awesome visual clarity of the HP Reverb, but you get the tracking quality of the Valve Index Knuckles controllers. There is obviously a subset of people that just don't care about controller tracking, and that is the VR simulator gamers. You know, if all you do is car racing or Elite Dangerous and Star Wars Squadrons because you have HOTAS and joysticks and that's how you play, then controller tracking is basically completely irrelevant, and the HP Reverb is just going to be an awesome overall experience. So how does the HP Reverb stack up against the other headsets on the market? Well, I will say the Quest 2 is a more versatile, budget-friendly option that can be standalone, and you don't even need a PC at all. So if you don't have a gaming PC, that's probably still the right route to go with. If you have a mid-range or better gaming PC, I do recommend the HP Reverb G2 over the Valve Index. And that's because it has similar ergonomics, but way better visual clarity. It's a big improvement over the Valve Index. Plus, the HP Reverb is $400 cheaper because you don't have to buy the base stations or Index controllers. Now, I filmed most of this review before I received my Pimax 8KX in the mail, and now that I've tested both headsets, I will say that the clarity between the Pimax and the Reverb is very similar. For me, the top three headsets right now is the Quest 2 for the newbie or someone who doesn't have a gaming laptop, the HP Reverb for someone who has as a mid-tier or up and doesn't have as much of a budget. And then the Pimax 8KX is just the top dog right now because of its higher resolution and crazy FOV, allowing you to just get more immersed in the content as you play. Now I have created a VR headset comparison spreadsheet, which I'll link in the video description down below, but it'll give you a good idea of what I think of the top VR headsets currently out there. Overall, if you want the VR headset with the best visual clarity and at a reasonable price, only $600, I think that's a very reasonable price for this awesome VR headset, then I think the HP Reverb G2 is a great choice. That's it for my review of the HP Reverb G2. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next one. Brandon out. Huzzah.